guys, it's Casey. So today we're going to be talking about my October TBR. So since it is October and the beginning of the spooky season, I'm going to try to keep this TBR a little bit themed on spooky or at least autumnal kind of vibes. That being said, I'm going to go through kind of the same chunks that I usually do. So we're going to start off with the 4 challenges I give myself every month, and then any holds or anything I have at the library, and then lastly other things I just am going to hope to get to. But first, let's start off with checking back in on my September TBR. So September went alright. I read most of the things. So I'm filming this pretty close to when it's going up, so the month is really almost over, and I'm not done with my TBR. Right now I'm kind of towards the end of reading The City We Became, which is great, by the way. We'll talk about that in a different video. And technically, based on my September TBR, the 2 books I have left are Peter Pan and A Closed and Common Orbit. Now, I would love to say I'm gonna get both of those done before the end of the month, but realistically speaking, I don't think I'm going to. I'm still gonna get Peter Pan done. For one, it's one of my 4 required reading challenges, plus it's really short. So that I plan on getting done, but unfortunately it looks like I'm probably not gonna get A Closed and Common Orbit read by the end of the month. So I'll try to read that in October, but it doesn't really fit the theme. But let's go ahead and get into October's TBR. So the first challenge that I give myself every month is to read a new release, so something that has come out within the last calendar year. And again, I wanted to kind of keep this spooky, so I'm going to be reading Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. So I don't physically have this book with me yet, but it should be arriving in the next couple of days. I'm so excited. But Harrow the Ninth is the sequel to Gideon the Ninth, which was published last year. And Gideon the Ninth was a super buzzy book. So I read it back in June, and I think I ended up giving it 3 stars, which was a little bit lower than a lot of other people did. But I also said I was really interested to see where the series went from here and planned on continuing. So that's what we'll be reading in October. So the tagline for Gideon the Ninth was Lesbian Necromancers in Space, and it followed our main character Gideon as she worked with Harrowhawk of the House of the Ninth to become Harrow's swordsman as Harrow went through these kind of trials to become a member of the Emperor's Immortal Legion of Necromancers. The ending of Gideon the Ninth was a lot, and I'm really excited to see where we go from here. So that will be the first book I'm reading in October. So the next challenge I give myself is a backlist title, and for the purposes of this challenge, that means a book I have personally had on my shelves for over a year. So I struggled with this one a little bit, trying to find one that would fit in my October theme. But ultimately what I decided to go with was Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. So honestly, shamefully, I have never seen Howl's Moving Castle or read it before. So I actually don't know how much this fits the autumnal vibes, but I get a little bit of that off of what I know about this and what I've seen from the movie and things like that. So we're gonna count it because I don't really have anything better for this prompt. And so actually now that I'm trying to talk about this book, I realize I really don't know what this story is about. I know it follows our main character Sophie, who gets turned into an old woman, and she ends up kind of going through this castle with a wizard named Howl, but that is really the extent of what I know. But I know this is a well-beloved story and movie, so I'm definitely excited to read it, and I think it's gonna have, that light, witchy, autumnal vibes that I'm looking for. It's also relatively short. It's not as chunky as a lot of the fantasy books that I tend to read, so hopefully we can go a little bit lighter. So the next challenge I give myself is to read either a poetry, short story collection, or a classic, and for that I'm going to be reading should have grabbed the book first. I'm going to be reading Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So this is my roommate's copy that she's actually letting me borrow. I've never read Frankenstein, which it seems like a thing I should have done at this point. So this is obviously a classic that follows Dr. Victor Frankenstein as he raises a monster and is kind of like a classic horror novel. Beyond just knowing the vague story of Frankenstein, I actually don't know that much about it. I've seen several adaptations and things like that, but I've never actually read the original book, so I will be doing that for October for my classic. Again, it's also really short. You might be noticing a theme. I have a ton of stuff to do in October, so as much as I want to create a big impossible TBR to tackle, I probably don't have time to do that this month, so we're gonna give myself a little bit of a break. So the last prompt I give myself is a non-fiction book, and for that I'm going to be reading Ghostland by Colin Dickey. So this is a book that I know literally nothing about. I've basically never heard anyone talking about it. What happened was I needed a nonfiction book, and I was like, what's a spooky nonfiction book? So I googled spooky nonfiction books, and this came up, so we're going with it. As far as I know, Ghostland is the story of popular like ghost stories and ghost mythology across the United States, so it kind of explores some really like prominent legends in certain places and kind of goes through a lot of them. And so it manages to be a nonfiction book because it's exploring like the legends and like the real world things that have happened in these like haunted places, while also being spooky because we're looking at all these haunted ghost stories. It's gonna be fun. Hopefully it's not too spooky because I am a wimp when it comes to scary things, so we'll see how it goes. So those are my 4 required reads. Those are the prompts I give myself every month, and those are the 4 that I have to read by the end of the month. So next I'm gonna talk about what is coming up on like my library holds and things like that. And it wouldn't be a TBR if I didn't talk about how I'm going to be reading 1 or 2 books of the Dresden Files. So I think the next one that I have coming up is Small Favor, which is book 10? 11? I'm losing track. 10 or 11. And shortly after that I will be listening to the audiobook for Turncoat, which is either book 11 or 12. Depending on how all that lines up. So as I've talked about countless times before at this point, the Dresden Files are about wizard for hire Harry Dresden, who lives in Chicago and works as a private investigator and a consultant for the Chicago Police Department, solving all manner of supernatural crimes and murders and things like that that may have been perpetrated by a supernatural entity. So we're like 10 books in, and I am so committed to this story, and I've been reading it at a pace of like 1 or 2 a month since June, I think. So I'm really excited to just keep progressing through and eventually catch up to the publication, because I think Jim Butcher is about to publish Battlegrounds, which I think is the 17th book. 18th. I don't know. Counting's hard, guys. So now we're just gonna get into the books that I just want to read. So keeping up with the spooky theme, I'm gonna read a thriller. Who knew? Who is she? So I will be reading Final Girls by Riley Sagar. So I know basically nothing about the plot of this book, which is kind of how I prefer to go into mysteries and thrillers. That being said, I don't read mysteries and thrillers basically at all. So we'll see. I know that Riley Sagar is a very popular author, and I think this is one of their earlier books. So I know that this isn't necessarily like the most well received of those, but it is the one I found at the used bookstore like a couple months ago, so here we go. But yeah, I don't really know anything about this other than that it is a thriller, and I wanted to try to read at least 1 thriller during October, so that's what we're going with. So I told myself I'd keep this TBR themed and nice and light and not add in anything ridiculous. So I'll just grab this real quick. Probably gonna want to read The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. So I finished reading The Well of Ascension like a week or 2 ago at this point. It was really good. I am absolutely loving the Mistborn series. And like I've said before, I tend to want to just plow through series, so even spacing it out like 1 book a month has been a little bit difficult for me. So we might just read this next month so that I can kind of complete the trilogy, even though I wanted to go a little bit lighter this month on the amount that I have to read, and it's not really fitting with my October theme, but I just wanted to put that out there because I am now caught up to this 3rd book. So if I'm being honest, it'll probably happen, but no pressure. You know, there's no pressure to finish this like, what, 750 page book? We're not. It's just, if it happens, it happens. You know, it's fine. And since it was on September's TBR and I never actually finished it, I should probably go ahead and read A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. I don't think this is spooky or autumnal in any way, shape, or form other than, like, it's orange. So it's gotta count for something, right? So yeah, this plus a couple of audiobooks and ebooks and a book that hasn't been delivered to my house yet is my confirmed TBR for October. And then we'll just go ahead and add those 2 in because I know myself and I know I'm gonna want to read them. But again, no pressure, this is chill. This looks like what we're gonna be tackling in October. I'm excited to be doing kind of a at least lightly themed TBR. I always thought TBR videos were fun. Oh, Well of Ascension fell. I always thought themed TBR videos were fun, so I thought I'd just kind of make this at least a little bit spooky to get into that kind of October feeling. But that's all I've got for you guys today. If you've read any of these books, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm excited to hear about them. But other than that, if you want to keep up with what I'm reading, I have a link to my Goodreads in the description below, but I'll see you guys next time.